Dan Orlovsky just made the biggest mistake of his career, slamming Shedeur Sanders over that viral miming clip before the Vikings game. And now the internet's tearing him apart. Fans are calling him out for hypocrisy. Analysts are defending Shedeur's confidence. And even insiders are saying Orlovsky just exposed his bias on live TV.
I actually don't think there is a time and place to act like that as a quarterback. I think, one, everything that you do when you're a quarterback, I don't care if you're first, second, or third, is a job interview. In that league, every single thing you do. And my question to Shedeur would be, are you helping yourself in your own building? Did that 30 or 40 seconds help you in your own building when it comes to what they think you can be in the future? And then did you help yourself outside of your own building? There's 64 jobs, essentially, at that spot in the NFL. Did that 30 or 40 seconds help you at all when it comes to your future there or your future elsewhere? And when you're a later round draft pick, every single thing you do has to be from the lens of, how do I make myself more appealing to the people in this building that say, give that guy a chance? Or more appealing to it, do you think an owner or a general manager or a president or somebody making decisions is watching that going, I want that guy leading my franchise?
Yeah. No,
Did you help yourself?
Dan Orlovsky just made the boldest statement about Shedeur Sanders on national television, and the internet is losing its mind. I don't think there is a time and place to act like that as a quarterback, Dan fired off, questioning whether Shedeur's viral mime performance helped him at all with the Browns or any of the other 31 teams watching. But here's where this gets absolutely crazy. Less than 48 hours later, the same analysts who destroyed Shedeur are now backtracking. Will Compton's dropping truth bombs about Rex Ryan's blood pressure getting up. And suddenly, everyone's realizing they might have completely missed what Shedeur was actually doing. Was this a rookie mistake that could cost him his career? Or did Shedeur Sanders just pull off the most calculated chess move we've seen from a third-string quarterback in NFL history? Because what happened next between Dan Orlovsky and the entire sports media world is something you need to see to believe.
he was doing was responding to Rex Ryan, who on this show on Monday essentially criticized Shedeur Sanders for a number of things, but basically said, keep your mouth shut. That was Rex Ryan's message on Monday to Shedeur Sanders. Shedeur Sanders decided to take the time yesterday, on the day the Browns made a quarterback change, to literally keep his mouth shut and to mime. Now, there's a time and a place for this. That probably wasn't the time, not on the day where the Browns make a quarterback change. So his answer comes off in that way, with him trying to send a message to Rex Ryan, and it goes viral and obviously creates a firestorm, and people have their own reactions to how he handled this particular situation.
So, Dan, you're the first one.
Listen, you've probably already seen the clip by now. Shedeur Sanders standing in front of reporters, moving his mouth with zero sound coming out, miming his answers like he's trapped in an invisible box on some street corner in Paris. The internet exploded. Twitter went nuclear, and every sports analyst with a microphone suddenly had an opinion about this kid's future in the NFL.
Yeah, it's like going off that. At the end of the day, you responded to the internet, because what happens is what happened on here. He had the opportunity was there because Rex Ryan was reacting to something that comments that he had made over the weekend, saying like, hey, you know, that's not a question for me to answer, but then he continued to answer it from his own lens, like, I am more capable than what we're seeing in the NFL right now. And then you get my man, Coach Rex Ryan's, his blood pressure gets up. He starts, this is an old school ball coach. He wants you to shut up, keep your head down and work. Now he seems like the grandpa yelling at the TV because he lost the remote. He's going on a tangent. Ultimately, says some things to where it could be assumed that he's not working hard. Internet takes fold. It's viral. Then Shedeur is in a spot to where he responds to the internet, because I think what both of you guys said is very well said. It's like, bro, are you doing everything that you can to help you out in the situation, in the building, and to all 31 other teams that are out there right now?
I can't remember another player that was this polarizing out.
But what most people don't know, what most of those hot takes completely missed, is the chess game that was happening behind the scenes. See, this wasn't just some immature rookie throwing a tantrum. This was a calculated response to something that went down days earlier. And when you understand the full context, the whole story changes. Let's rewind. The Browns just made their quarterback change official. Dillon Gabriel, the third-round pick out of Oregon, gets the nod as the starter. Joe Flacco, the 40-year-old veteran who was supposed to be their savior, gets benched and becomes QB2. And Shedeur Sanders, the most polarizing quarterback in this draft class, he stays exactly where he's been. QB3, third string, watching from the sidelines while everyone debates his future. Now here's where it gets interesting. When the media walked up to Shedeur to get his reaction, they weren't just asking a simple question. They were looking for a soundbite, a moment, something they could run with on every sports show from here to next Sunday. And Shedeur? He gave them exactly what they wanted, but not in the way anyone expected. He stood there in front of all those cameras and literally kept his mouth shut. Not in a passive way, no, he was actively miming every word, moving his lips with this slight smirk on his face, gesturing with his hands, the whole performance. Zero audio, just visual theater. It was the most talked-about silent interview since Marshawn Lynch hit everyone with, "I'm just here so I don't get fined." The backlash was immediate. Dan Orlovsky came out swinging. The former NFL quarterback turned analyst didn't hold back on national television. "I actually don't think there is a time and place to act like that as a quarterback," Dan said, his frustration visible. "Everything that you do when you're a quarterback, I don't care if you're first, second, or third, is a job interview in that league. Every single thing you do." Dan went straight for the jugular with his next question. "My question to Shedeur would be, are you helping yourself in your own building? Did that 30 or 40 seconds help you in your own building when it comes to what they think you can be in the future? And then, did you help yourself outside of your own building? There's 64 jobs essentially at that spot in the NFL. Did that 30 or 40 seconds help you at all when it comes to your future there or your future elsewhere?" And here's the kicker that really drove it home. When you're a later round draft pick, every single thing you do has to be from the lens of, how do I make myself more appealing to the people in this building that say, give that guy a chance, or more appealing to an owner or a general manager or a president or somebody making decisions? Do you think they're watching that going, I want that guy leading my franchise? Brutal. Absolutely brutal. And on the surface, Dan's point makes total sense, right? You're a fifth-round pick. You're QB3 on a struggling Browns team. You're already fighting an uphill battle with all the pre-draft questions about your maturity, your attitude, your ability to be a franchise quarterback. Why would you add fuel to that fire? Taylor Lewan jumped in with his perspective, and he didn't sugarcoat it either. Obviously, the attitude there, it's elementary. It's a little immature, Taylor said. I'm not here to go through Shedeur's life. There's so many things he's gone through in his life that I have not gone through myself. His dad, who he is, the most athletic human being to maybe ever touch the earth. But if you are playing the greatest team sport of all time, and you're in a competition that we all have been in at one point in our lives when somebody gets the job over you, what a good opportunity it would be to be like, hey, excited for Dillon. This is not about me. If I can do anything to help him, I know we're both rookies. That's the approach you want to take, Taylor continued, hitting on something crucial. A lot of knocks on Shedeur going into the draft process was the maturity, the extracurriculars. We're throwing the watch up, which you know is fun and awesome for TV. It gets people like us to talk about it. But if we're talking about sustaining your career and how are you going to, what's it going to look like in 10 years? Are you going to regret doing that? The answer is probably. On paper, this seems like an open and shut case. Shedeur messed up. He let his emotions get the better of him. He responded to criticism in the worst possible way at the worst possible time. Career suicide for a third-string rookie. Case closed, except it's not that simple. Because what Dan Orlovsky and Taylor Lewan and half the sports media world either forgot or conveniently left out was the reason Shedeur did this in the first place. This wasn't a random act of immaturity. This was a direct response to something specific. something personal, something that had been building for days. Enter Rex Ryan. Days before this Mime incident, Rex Ryan went on ESPN's Get Up and absolutely torched Shedeur Sanders. And I'm not talking about normal analyst criticism. This was personal. Rex, the old-school defensive coordinator turned media personality, was fired up about Shedeur's comments from earlier in the week, where Shedeur had said he felt he was capable of playing better than some of the starting quarterbacks in the NFL right now. Now, look, is that statement a little bold for a guy who hasn't taken a single regular season snap? Sure, but it's also exactly what you want to hear from a competitive quarterback who believes in himself. If you don't think you're better than everyone else at your position, you probably shouldn't be playing quarterback in the NFL. But Rex Ryan? He took it as disrespect. He took it as arrogance, and he let Shedeur have it on national television. We're all waiting to see Shedeur Sanders be the guy, or Gabriel, whatever. Rex started, his voice rising. Something's missing. Something's missing with this kid. This kid talks, and he runs his mouth like he's I can be a starting quarterback, with his arms crossed like this. Get your ass in the front row and study and do all that. If I know, the whole league knows. Quit being an embarrassment that way. You got the talent to be the quarterback. You should be. You should be embarrassed that you're not the quarterback now. But here's the line that really set everything in motion. The line that makes Shedeur's mime response make perfect sense. Rex Ryan, looking directly into the camera, said this: "Keep your mouth shut. Keep your mouth shut." So when Shedeur Sanders stood in front of those reporters and literally kept his mouth shut, miming his answers without saying a single word, he wasn't being immature. He wasn't having a breakdown. He was sending a message directly to Rex Ryan. He was saying, "You told me to keep my mouth shut? Cool. Watch this." Will Compton saw it immediately. "At the end of the day, you responded to the internet," Will said, breaking down exactly what happened. Rex Ryan was reacting to something, to remarks and comments that Shedeur had made over the weekend, saying, "That's not a question for me to answer." But then he continued to answer it from his own lens, like, "I am more capable than what we're seeing in the NFL right now," Will continued, painting the full picture. Then you get my man, Coach Rex Ryan. His blood pressure gets up. He starts going. This is an old-school ball coach. He wants you to shut up, keep your head down, and work. Now he seems like the grandpa yelling at the TV because he lost the remote. He's going on a tangent. Ultimately, he says some things to where it could be assumed that Shedeur's not working hard. Internet takes hold. It's viral. Then Shedeur is in a spot to where he responds to the internet. And there it is. The full story. The complete context that changes everything. Shedeur wasn't just being petty. He was standing up for himself against someone who questioned his work ethic on national television. He was responding to a media personality who told him to keep his mouth shut by doing exactly that, but in a way that made his point crystal clear. Now, here's where this gets even more interesting. Because the conversation didn't stop there. The panel kept going, and you could see the shift starting to happen. They started comparing Shedeur to Tim Tebow, another quarterback, who was discussed way more than his position on the depth chart warranted. IDQ can't remember another player that was this polarizing outside of the field, someone noted. Maybe Tim Tebow because there were times we were covering single-A minor league baseball for the Mets. There were times we were talking about the fourth or fifth tight end on the depth chart for the Jaguars. Because it's Tim Tebow, Dillon Gabriel is starting his first game, and we're leading the show with Shedeur Sanders in this interview. They had to acknowledge the elephant in the room. We have to really understand the reality that Shedeur Sanders, on this side of it, is not our normal fifth-round pick. He's not our normal third stringer. The things he does and says we're going to talk about because they create headlines. They create topic bars. But then came the crucial point, the one that Dan and others kept hammering. For Shedeur, it's the complete opposite. He has to realize that he is a fifth-rounder, and that he is a third-string quarterback, and he is a rookie, and there is an expectation and a standard that comes with that. The comparison to other quarterbacks came up. We have so many quarterbacks in the league that have been dragged in the media, rightfully or wrongfully, someone pointed out. Dak Prescott, for one, always says the right thing. Jalen Hurts has been dogged for 3 years, always says the right thing. I hope that this is a moment where there's somebody in Shedeur's life, or there's people in Shedeur's life to be like, hey, like you have to be yourself. There's no doubt. But at that position there, if that's not worth it because you're trying to validate being the CEO of a billion-dollar company. Look, they're not wrong about the bigger picture. At the quarterback position, especially in the NFL, your words matter. Your actions matter. Everything you do is under a microscope. And when you're already fighting against narratives about your maturity and your attitude, giving the media ammunition like this Mime interview isn't exactly helping your cause. But here's what I keep coming back to. And here's why this story is way more complicated than the hot takes suggest. Shedeur Sanders has been dealing with a level of scrutiny and criticism that no other third-string quarterback in NFL history has ever faced. From the moment he declared for the draft, people have been waiting for him to fail. Waiting for him to prove them right about whatever preconceived notions they had about him being Coach Prime's kid, or being too flashy, or not being a real leader. Think about it. He falls to the 5th round despite putting up video game numbers at Colorado. Teams that desperately need quarterbacks pass on him multiple times. Then he lands in Cleveland, where the quarterback situation has been a circus for 2 decades. He's behind Joe Flacco, a 40-year-old who's clearly past his prime. He's competing with Dillon Gabriel, who had an incredible college career at Oregon. And every single day, he's got media members asking him loaded questions, trying to get him to say something that will create controversy. So when Rex Ryan goes on national television and tells him to keep his mouth shut, questions his work ethic, and basically calls him an embarrassment to the quarterback position, what's Shedeur supposed to do? Smile and nod? Give some generic, I respect Coach Ryan's opinion response that nobody believes? Instead, he does something that's going to be talked about for weeks. He creates a moment. He sends a message. He controls the narrative, even if that narrative is Shedeur Sanders is immature. Because here's the thing that all these analysts are missing. Shedeur Sanders is playing a different game than they think he's playing. He's not just trying to be QB2 in Cleveland. He's not just trying to prove he belongs in the NFL. He's building a brand, creating moments, staying relevant in a league where third-string quarterbacks are usually forgotten the moment they're drafted. Is it risky? Absolutely. Could it backfire? 100%. But you know what? We're talking about him right now instead of Dillon Gabriel's first start. His name is trending on Twitter. Every sports show in America is debating whether he handled this right or wrong. And love him or hate him, you know exactly who Shedeur Sanders is. Stay locked in, because there's way more to this story. And what happens next in London might just change everything we think we know about this situation. Now, while everyone's been obsessing over Shedeur's mime performance and whether Dan Orlovsky owes him an apology, there's an actual football game happening today that makes this whole situation even more intense. The Cleveland Browns are in London, Tottenham Hotspur Stadium to be exact, and they're about to face the Minnesota Vikings in what could be the most pressure-packed debut for a rookie quarterback we've seen all season. And here's where the irony gets thick. Dillon Gabriel, the guy who just took Shedeur's potential starting spot, is about to walk into a buzzsaw. Because while everyone's talking about Shedeur's maturity, Dillon Gabriel is preparing for his first NFL start against Brian Flores' defense, a defensive coordinator who's made a career out of destroying rookie quarterbacks. Let's talk about what's actually on the line in this game, because it's way bigger than just one rookie's debut. The Browns are 1-3, barely keeping their heads above water. Their offense has been an absolute disaster. They haven't scored more than 17 points in a single game this season. Joe Flacco, the guy who was supposed to bring veteran stability, has been a turnover machine with 6 interceptions in 4 games. The entire franchise is desperate for a spark, any spark, and they're hoping this 24-year-old from Oregon can provide it. But here's what makes this even crazier. Dillon Gabriel is making history whether he succeeds or fails. He's the first quarterback in NFL history to make his debut start outside the United States. His family back in Hawaii, yeah, he's from Mililani, they're waking up at 3:30 a.m. to watch this game. And get this, his dad doesn't even have a passport, so he can't be there in person. Talk about pressure. Fun fact, need to get my dad a passport, Gabriel joked with reporters in London. But you could hear it in his voice. The weight of this moment isn't lost on him. Preparation allows you to be confident on game day, he said. I even had 4 weeks prior to this to master how we go through a week. The Vikings are sitting at 2-2, coming off a brutal loss to the Pittsburgh Steelers in Dublin, where their backup quarterback Carson Wentz got absolutely demolished, sacked 6 times, picked off twice. Minnesota's missing their starting quarterback, J.J. McCarthy, with a high ankle sprain. They just placed their center Ryan Kelly on injured reserve after suffering 2 concussions in the first month. Their offensive line is a mess with multiple starters out. But here's the thing that should terrify Cleveland. Brian Flores doesn't care about your injury excuses. This man has a 4-0 record against rookie quarterbacks since joining the Vikings. He destroyed Caleb Williams twice last year. He made Bryce Young look like he'd never played football. Aiden O'Connell? Forget about it. And now Dillon Gabriel, making his first career start, has to solve this defense in London at 9:30 a.m. Eastern Time, with the entire NFL world watching and comparing him to Shedeur Sanders every single snap. The Browns are 3.5-point underdogs in this game. The over-under is set at just 36.5 points. That's how little confidence Vegas has in either offense. Cleveland's ranked next to last in scoring, averaging 14 points per game. Their offensive line ranks 30th in pass blocking, which means Gabriel's going to be running for his life against a Vikings defense that's been bringing the heat. But you want to know what's really wild? While Dillon Gabriel is out there fighting for his NFL life, Shedeur Sanders is going to be standing on that sideline in London, watching, waiting, knowing that one bad performance, one injury, one disaster of a game could change everything. Because here's the reality that nobody wants to say out loud. If Dillon Gabriel struggles today, and there's a real chance he does against this Vikings defense, the calls for Shedeur are going to get loud. Not from the Browns coaching staff necessarily, but from the fans, from the media, from everyone who's been watching this drama unfold. Kevin Stefanski, the Browns head coach, has been adamant about the depth chart. When reporters asked why Shedeur wasn't moved to QB2 when Gabriel got the starting job, Stefanski just kept repeating, "Joe's the backup," like a broken record. When pressed about Shedeur's role moving forward, he said, "My focus is on this game," and shut down the conversation. That's not the sound of a coach who's planning to play his third-string quarterback anytime soon. That's the sound of a coach who's made his decision and isn't interested in the noise surrounding it. But here's what Dan Orlovsky and all those analysts who criticized Shedeur might be missing. The Browns are 1-3 and sinking fast. They traded for Cam Robinson to fix their offensive tackle situation. They're one of the worst offenses in football. And they have 2 first-round picks in 2026, their own and Jacksonville's from the Travis Hunter trade. You know what that means? Tank mode could be coming. And if this season goes completely sideways, if Dillon Gabriel isn't the answer and Joe Flacco is washed, the Browns might just say, "Forget it," and give Shedeur his shot anyway. Not because they believe in him necessarily, but because why not see what you have before you use those draft picks on another quarterback? The Vikings have their own drama to deal with. Carson Wentz has been shaky, becoming the first quarterback in NFL history to start for 6 different teams in 6 consecutive seasons. Their running game features Jordan Mason, who they traded a 5th-round pick for from the 49ers. He's been solid with 271 yards and 2 touchdowns in 4 games. Justin Jefferson is doing Justin Jefferson things with 326 yards and a touchdown on 22 receptions. But Minnesota's defense? That's where they're making their money. They're ranked 3rd in the NFL in passing yards allowed per game at just 151.5. They've forced 7 turnovers, ranking 4th in the league. And with Brian Flores calling the shots, you better believe they've got something special cooked up for Gabriel's debut. The game kicks off at 9:30 a.m. Eastern, 2:30 p.m. in London, which means by the time most of America wakes up and checks their phones, this whole narrative could be completely different. If Gabriel balls out, throws for 300 yards, a couple touchdowns, leads the Browns to a shocking upset over the Vikings. Then, Shedeur's Mime moment becomes nothing more than an immature blip from a 3rd stringer who couldn't handle the pressure of being QB3. Dan Orlovsky looks like a genius for calling it out. Rex Ryan gets to pound his chest about being right all along. But if Gabriel struggles, if he gets destroyed by Flores' defense, if the Browns lose 27-10 and look completely outmatched, if the offense still can't score more than 17 points, then suddenly Shedeur's silence starts to look a lot more like confidence than immaturity. His response to Rex Ryan becomes less about disrespect and more about a competitor who knows his time is coming. And here's the wildest part of all this. We're about to find out which version of this story is true in just a few hours. By the time you're watching this video, that game might already be over. The narrative might have already shifted. Dan Orlovsky might be eating crow, or he might be taking a victory lap. But regardless of what happens in London today, one thing is crystal clear. Shedeur Sanders has accomplished something that very few 3rd-string quarterbacks in NFL history have ever done. He's made himself impossible to ignore. He's created a storyline that transcends his position on the depth chart. He's got the entire football world talking about him, debating him, analyzing his every move. Is that the right way to build an NFL career? Maybe not. Dan Orlovsky and Taylor Lewin and all those analysts have valid points about professionalism and being a good teammate and handling the media the right way. But you know what else is true? In a league where careers are measured in years, not decades, where one injury can end everything, where 32 teams are constantly looking for the next franchise quarterback, staying relevant matters, being memorable matters, making people talk about you, even when they're criticizing you, matters. Shedeur Sanders bet on himself when he mimed those answers. He bet that the attention, the controversy, the viral moment would be worth whatever backlash came with it. He bet that when his opportunity finally comes, whether it's in Cleveland or somewhere else, people will remember his name. And honestly, looking at how this week has played out, with every major sports show debating his future, with social media exploding over his every move, with us sitting here breaking down a 3rd-string quarterback's media appearance like it's the Zapruder film, I'd say that bet is paying off. The real question isn't whether Shedeur should have kept his mouth shut. The real question is, when he finally gets his chance to play, will all this attention have been worth it? Will the kid who fell to the 5th round, who stayed silent to make a point, who turned a quarterback change into a national story, will he actually be able to play? Because that's the thing about building a brand on confidence and controversy. Eventually, you have to back it up on the field. And for Shedeur Sanders, that day is coming. Maybe not today in London. Maybe not next week. But it's coming. And when it does, All these analysts who questioned his maturity, all these hot takes about his attitude, all these debates about whether he handled the Rex Ryan situation correctly. None of it will matter if he can't play. But if he can play, if Shedeur Sanders gets his shot and lights it up, then this whole Mime incident becomes a legendary moment. The day a third-string quarterback stood up to the old guard, controlled the narrative on his own terms, and proved that sometimes the old rules don't apply to the new generation. So, what do you think? Did Shedeur Sanders make a genius move by responding to Rex Ryan the way he did? Or did he just prove all his critics right about his maturity? And more importantly, do you think Dan Orlovsky regrets coming at him that hard now that we know the full story? Drop your thoughts in the comments below, because this debate is far from over. And if you want to stay ahead of every twist and turn in this story, if you want to know the second Shedeur gets his chance to prove everyone wrong, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. Because, trust me, this story is just getting started, and you don't want to miss what happens next. The game's about to kick off in London. Dillon Gabriel's about to make history. And somewhere on that sideline, Shedeur Sanders is watching, waiting, and probably planning his next move. Stay tuned, because this is about to get real interesting.